Welcome in to Rewind Wrestling, where we hit play on wrestling's past, and we are entering the Golden Age Rewind. And we're going to start with where it all began, WrestleMania I, where it all begins indeed, as the most recognizable show in wrestling gets its official start as Hulk Hogan teams with Mr. T in the main event. Cyndi Lauper has some fun, and much more. And yes, it was March 31st, 1985, Madison Square Garden in New York City, New York. And if you want some nostalgia right off the bat, the opening intro video hits all those notes. There's so much good stuff in there from the mid 80s, and it just has that feel to it, right? Of what would become the phenomenon that was WrestleMania. All those just little things, again, the nostalgia notes, they're all in this opening video package. Loved it. And then ringside, you get a little more nostalgia as Gorilla Monsoon and Jesse the Body Ventura throw it to Howard Finkel, who uses the magic line, which we've heard in so many different video packages and just isolated sound bites over the years. Welcome to WrestleMania. Can't do it like the Fink does it, but you guys know it. You can hear it in your head right now. And what a moment that was, and it kind of set the stage for many WrestleManias to come, in terms of just having those three words kind of be the symbol of WrestleMania. Mean Gene Okerlund sung the national anthem like only Mean Gene can. So if you wanted a trivia note there, Mean Gene, the person who sang the national anthem for the first time at a WrestleMania. And meanwhile, we go into the show itself. Lord Alfred Hayes is here. He's also awesome. He throws it to Gene, who's with Tito Santana. Tito says that the Executioner won't stop him. The Executioner, who, by the way, was played by Buddy Rose here, sends his own message to Tito, and we're off and running with our first match, Tito Santana versus the Executioner. So there's another trivia note if you want it. The first ever match at WrestleMania, Tito Santana and the Executioner. And really, it's impossible to talk about this match without talking about the greatness of Gorilla Monsoon and Jesse Ventura, one of my favorite commentary pairings of all time. And it does quickly bring you back to the awesome chemistry between those two as they're describing the match. And again, it has that mid-'80s type feel to it. Tito kind of controls the match early on. And while the Executioner does get some offense going, you can probably kind of guess what this was for, right? It was really to showcase Tito's talents. And you want to talk about one of the all-time baby faces like Tito Santana. Doesn't get much better than that. I mean, this guy, would just had all of those little intangibles you needed to be a great babyface. And you had Tito throwing the Executioner to the outside near the ringside table. We remember when that existed. The tables were right beside the ring and all that. But it is Tito getting the win here, as you would expect, using the figure four. Not a lot to add in this match, other than it really was just a nice showcase for Tito Santana. He gets the win via submission in this one. Meanwhile, backstage, we go, and Alfred's going to throw it to some pre-recorded interviews here. It is with SD Jones and King Kong Bundy. I'll tell you, Mean Gene doesn't look too thrilled that SD is looking at the wrong camera here, which, come on, sometimes, different presentation. This is a WrestleMania, like all this other stuff. You got some of these pre-recorded interviews. We've seen plenty of guys look at the wrong camera over the years. So I did put it in my notes, though. Gene did not seem to look too thrilled at him looking at the wrong one. But that is your next match on the card. King Kong Bundy, who is accompanied by Jimmy Hart, taking on SD Jones. And I put in my notes, and I think this speaks true. You should never jump into King Kong Bundy and expect good things to happen, which is what SD Jones tried to do here. And Bundy does what he should have done, and that's ram him straight into the corner, hit the avalanche, and then the splash for the squash victory. That's all this was. It was simply a squash, as Bundy, got the first shot here from SD and used his power and his strength to throw him into the corner, squash him. And that was that. I mean, like I said, the first match, kind of your purpose was seemingly just to kind of showcase Tito's skills as a babyface to get the crowd going and all that. But this was really a showcase for King Kong Bundy and pushing him as a monster. We know what he would be doing the next year at WrestleMania. So we'll get to that here on the channel as well. But, really nothing more than just establishing that this is King Kong Bundy's world and SD Jones was just living in it. 9 seconds here was the number of time for this match. All right, we're backstage again, and Mean Gene is with Matt Borne, of course, a.k.a. the future Doink, and Ricky Steamboat. And Steamboat, little mass here, little muscle mass for Ricky Steamboat. Jacked. I noted here is you have this one, and that's the third match on the card. Matt Borne versus Ricky Steamboat. And, I mean, Steamboat in this match, we obviously will talk about Steamboat a lot as we go through this Golden Age Rewind series here on Rewind Wrestling. But, I mean, Steamboat just an absolute stud. I mean, you could tell that just even at this point, right? And, of course, there was plenty you could tell that from Steamboat years before this at his other, ventures and other companies. But just still worth pointing out, I think. He just had the look. He had the in-ring work. He had all of it. I mean, we're talking a true legend here in Ricky Steamboat, and that was even on display in 1985 at WrestleMania I. Gorilla's technical terms here for parts of the body, also legendary. I could listen to Gorilla Monsoon talk about, again, numerous parts of the human anatomy for hours, just based on the way he described it. And there's a lot of that in this one. Again, given kind of the back and forth match here was pretty competitive between these two. But it is Ricky Steamboat hitting an awesome flying crossbody for the victory here to get the win over Matt Borne. But like I said, really the story of this one is Ricky Steamboat and just kind of understanding that this guy was operating at a different level here. So easily the best match of the first three here with this one. Backstage, it is Mean Gene with David Sammartino, who has Bruno Sammartino by his side. Brutus Beefcake and Johnny Valiant offered their response, and Valiant wants a piece of Bruno. So you've got two guys who are going to be in the corners here for the one-on-one match with Brutus with Johnny Valiant and David with Bruno in his corner. And again, if you want to go back to this era and understand, of course, this is 1985, but if you want to know how huge Bruno Sammartino was, and I don't just mean in terms of like stature, if you want to know what people thought of Bruno, go back and listen to the ovation he gets when Howard Finkel introduces him in David's corner. Just incredible stuff. And if you want to see some legendary stalling techniques, you can also get that in this match, because the pre-match with Beefcake and Valiant, you're going to get a lot of stalling here in this one. And I loved the fact that going back to my commentary duo here of Gorilla and Jesse, how they play up how much a loss would set back either man's career by 6 months to a year. Like, think about that. Not just saying, well, what happens if this guy loses here? Like, being so specific that losing this match at WrestleMania in a one-on-one capacity could set your career back by 6 months to a year. That is next level stuff that I don't think you get enough of in the current age of professional wrestling. And it's the little things like that that can make a big difference when it comes to adding these stakes to a non-title match, and a match that, is fourth on the card on a WrestleMania type show. So, you have the picture-in-picture also in this match of each manager. So you're seeing Bruno, you're seeing Johnny Valiant, and that's a nice touch here presentation-wise. This was a back-and-forth match. Sammartino kind of uses the amateur wrestling moves here throughout to work over Beefcake's leg, but it's Beefcake's underhanded tactics, surprise, surprise, allow him to get back into the match. The crowd really behind David, as you would expect, again, because they love Bruno. They're going to be behind David in this particular instance for WrestleMania. A simple back suplex gets one of the biggest pops of the match. Again, you want to talk about a different era. A back suplex gets one of the biggest pops out there, and it also shows you that wrestling doesn't have to be too complicated. Not saying you could do that kind of in this era of wrestling, but still, it showed you how simple things could be back then. And Valiant slams Sammartino on the exposed floor. David, of course, and that leads to Bruno running wild. So you give the people what you want here. The referee throws out the match. No one cares. It's a double DQ, but let's call it what it is. It was really all about giving Bruno that opportunity to run wild, because that was going to be the biggest reaction you got. It wouldn't have been David winning. It would have been Brutus winning. It was simply, you're going to do something for Bruno here, and that's how they set it up. So really enjoyed this. Not saying it was a classic by any means, but it was enjoyable just for Bruno's role in it and just seeing how the crowd reacted to him for sure. So, and I mentioned the Gorilla and Jesse commentary also, as you would expect, was fantastic. All right, backstage again we go, and it is Mean Gene with Greg Valentine and Jimmy Hart. They hype up the Intercontinental Championship, and then you have the Junkyard Dog running down Valentine, because we are going to get an Intercontinental Championship match here. The Junkyard Dog challenges the champion Greg Valentine with Jimmy Hart Speaking of the crowd loving someone, they love JYD in this match, and he got himself a superstar entrance here. One of the themes is kind of Valentine using his methodical approach to make it a grind for JYD. That was Valentine's style, which I appreciate even more, kind of in this era of wrestling. And you would expect, no surprise here, that Jimmy Hart does get involved in the match, with JYD causing Valentine to hit Jimmy Hart at one point. Shortly after, though, it's Valentine going the true heel route to use the ropes for leverage to earn the win. But here comes the ultimate babyface. It is Tito Santana running in to convince the referee of the cheating. So the referee restarts the match, counts out Valentine to award JYD the victory, but not the title. You're going to get a pop here from the crowd, of course, but, it was a finish. I didn't love it, but like I said, the fans did pop big for JYD being announced as the victor, which, you're able to kind of not have JYD win the title, and at the same time, you get the big crowd pop, like we said, kind of in the previous match, of you're playing to the strength of the match, and having a big pop for JYD, just as we talked about the Bruno kind of spots in the previous match, that's really what you were looking for here, to get some energy out of the crowd and all that. So, yeah, Junkyard Dog wins it via countout, but Greg Valentine still the Intercontinental Champion. All right, backstage again. Love hearing the Iron Sheik call Mean Gene Mean. The Iron Sheik, one of a kind. Another video we'll have here on the Golden Age series as we rewind that era of professional wrestling, looking at the Iron Sheik and Hulk Hogan, that famous match. Sheik, Nikolai Volkoff, and Freddie Blassie, they want to take over the world. That's the basis of this conversation. Captain Lou Albano comes in with Mike Rotundo and Barry Windham, and they're ready for the match. And it is going to be a WWF Tag Team Championship match, as the Iron Sheik and Nikolai Volkoff with Freddie Blassie are going to challenge the champions Barry Windham, Mike Rotundo with Captain Lou Albano for the WWF Tag Team Championships. To no one's surprise, the crowd trashes the ring for Nikolai's singing of the Russian national anthem. It's about the type of tag team match formula you would expect in this era. The babyfaces kind of focus on the wrestling and the teamwork, while the heels aim for the illegal tactics. Four entertaining wrestlers here, if you think about just the combination of these guys. So they made this fun. They kept the fans involved throughout the match. Windham was put in the hot tag spot, but after he hits the Bulldog on Nikolai, all hell breaks loose. That allows Blassie to get the cane to Sheik, and the Iron Sheik wallops Barry Windham with it while the referee's distracted. And we have new champions in what I thought really was a solid tag team match. I think, some people may look on paper and say, not so sure about this one, but this was 1985, and they worked a pretty good tag team formula here. And like I said, I think these were pretty, entertaining wrestlers, these four in this combination. So, new champs, and thought it was a pretty solid tag team match, and maybe would go as far as to say it was the best match so far on this show. So, the heels get the win, and of course, Gene Mean, questions the new champs, and of course, the Iron Sheik just no-sells it and boasts his awesomeness. So, I really enjoyed this sequence, from the pre-match promo with the Iron Sheik, the match, and then to this. Good stuff from Sheiky Baby here in this part of the WrestleMania I card. But Mean Gene also going to welcome in Big John Studd and Bobby the Brain Heenan with the $15,000 prize. Of course, we know what that's going to mean here in a second. Heenan truly the best, as he scolds Gene here and tells him not to touch the money. And that's going to lead us to our $15,000 slam match. Big John Studd with Bobby Heenan versus none other than Andre the Giant. So, the rules are, if Big John Studd gets slammed, Andre wins the money. If he doesn't, Andre must retire. A true spectacle here. The crowd's just mesmerized by Andre, as you would expect in this era. And I appreciate the trivia note from Jesse on this, mentioning Andre's shoe size. So here's another trivia note if you want to write it down. 23 or 24. So think about what shoe size you wear. I think about what shoe size I wear. And knowing that Andre's was a 23 or 24 per Jesse Ventura here. The manager picture-in-picture back for this one too, which again, I really enjoyed this for what it was, because you really are getting to see the managers in real time react, the highs and lows of the match. That's the story. And I like the fact that they added that in here a bit. Speaking of modern wrestling, which I would love to see that more of, but we don't really have a lot of managers in modern wrestling. This isn't a match that's obviously going to hold up very well in an era of speed and athleticism, because it really is all about just simply the slam and, all about power, certainly not for everyone. And it is eventually Andre slamming Big John Studd to win the money. The fans go wild, and that's kind of the thing, is really, other than having the tag team title change for the heels in the previous match, they've crafted a lot of stuff to get the fans to go wild here, and that's what you want. And I think that's one of the maybe underrated aspects of this first WrestleMania, is you really were finding ways to keep the crowd engaged and making it seem like such a spectacle, with the energy and just the enthusiasm. Really good job, I thought, just with the structure of all this. Even though Andre wins, here comes Bobby Heenan to sneak in to steal the money because Heenan was just fantastic. So no one's going to rate this on the star rating scale or anything like that. It's not what it's supposed to be. But Gene also talks with Andre, and of course Gene's impressed. But, Andre doesn't care about the money. He slammed Big John Studd, and he's not going to retire. So another cheerful moment here, as even though the heels get away with the money, Andre's bigger than money. This man only cares about pride. And he's not going to retire. So there you go. Good stuff here. Another kind of, again, really enjoyable sequence if you're looking at it just from the 80s lens on this. All right, Gene is also here with Wendi, Richter, and Cyndi Lauper. This is the 80s, folks. Richter and Lauper are pissed. They want some payback. Meanwhile, the fabulous Moolah is with Lelani Kai, and they guarantee victory as we're heading into this next match for the WWF Women's title. Wendi Richter with Cyndi Lauper, Lelani Kai with the fabulous Moolah. And, if you've seen this before, one of the highlights here for sure, Cyndi Lauper just awesome in her role. Obviously it was a huge deal for the WWF at the time to have Lauper involved in something like this. We knew the celebrities and just the way they played into this era. And it's just so cool that she embraced it the way that she did. Richter pissed entering the match, and she came out with a lot of aggression right from the start. They exchanged some offense for a while until the inevitable spot where Moolah goes after Richter, only for Lauper to break it up. Another big moment for the crowd. You get a nice near fall after that. Kai kicks out at 2.5. That gets a big pop from the crowd, and another near fall follows after that. And I give them credit because it really did, having these kind of near falls, it helped them win the fans over. And like I said, the energy and the enthusiasm continued in this match. Kai with the flying crossbody. It's reversed into a pinfall by Richter, and that's enough for the win. And it was more about the celebrity involvement here with Cyndi Lauper than anything else. But like I mentioned, they keep stacking these moments where you're getting the crowd really engaged and involved, and that was such a big part of it. And maybe why WrestleMania became what it became, because this was a great start to kind of have all this. So, Wendi Richter is the new champion, and Gene is with Richter. Cyndi Lauper, Dave Wolf afterwards. Lauper's just thrilled at the title change, of course. Richter's the champion, and plenty of more stuff we can get into when we do another WrestleMania 1 sort of deep dive looking at the news and notes surrounding this show. But this is the proper review here, so we're just going to go through the card itself and look at these matches and such. But another nice swing and a hit here for WWE with this WWF for this particular match. All right, the Fink is going to invite Billy Martin in as the special guest ring announcer because it is time for the main event. And then he introduces Liberace and Muhammad Ali as special judges. So another sequence here you've probably seen a lot if you're an old school wrestling fan with these three, Billy Martin, Liberace, and Muhammad Ali, all included. And I mentioned just more star power and what you wanted if you were Vince McMahon and wanted this WrestleMania to be a huge success. And our main event, which we all know by now, was Roddy Piper and Paul Orndorff with Bob Orton in their corner, taking on Hulk Hogan and Mr. T with Jimmy Snuka out with them. The build to this match, truly a spectacle. All four playing a role kind of in the Hogan-Piper match for the title at the War to Settle the Score the month prior. We'll do another review on that also in this series. I remember, watching that. And that's another one that I think plenty of good stuff there, especially you want to talk about interviews with celebrities. Mean Gene ran through the gamut at the War to Settle the Score on that one. What a discussion that'll be when you talk about all the people that Mean Gene interviewed on that show. But, I can't say enough about just the duo and the chemistry of Roddy Piper and Paul Orndorff. It shouldn't be a big shock to anyone when you look at them just individually. And I've also said, I think these are two of the guys, that probably throughout my entire wrestling fandom, I mean, they are two of those that just have grown so much on, like, in terms of, yes, you knew they were big stars and legends, but, like, I think I put them maybe higher than even most people do because of just how effective these two guys were throughout their career at playing so many different roles and the way they, specialized in them. Like, we'll get into 86 and all that with Orndorff and Hogan and that stuff, but, like, obviously Piper and just all the different combinations here of what they could do. What a duo here. And Hulkamania, 100% running wild in this era. There were no boos for the Hulkster here, as, was showcased by the huge pop he gets when his music hits. Jesse calls it the biggest match in the history of wrestling, which at this point, there's some validity to that, considering what WrestleMania would become. I mean, some would argue that, yes, maybe there were biggest matches before then, but knowing what this meant for the future of WrestleMania and what WrestleMania meant for the future of the company, I don't really disagree with that idea. Chaos breaks loose early here. That allows Muhammad Ali to jump in and restore some order. So you get the Muhammad Ali spot, get some crowd engagement with that. Love it. Everything, of course, builds to the hot tag to Mr. T, which then builds to the hot tag to Hogan. All four men just excellent in keeping the fans engaged here, and that's what I meant when I talked about Piper and Orndorff. They know how to get at the crowd. They were so good at that. And it's really kind of booked well from, if you want to call it like a spot standpoint. They hit all the right notes, I think, making sure that everyone kind of had their moments. Of course, you can't have this match without having the outside parties get involved. So Snuka and Bob Orton eventually go at it, and then it's Orton who accidentally hits Orndorff off the top to allow Hogan to score the pin for the victory. Not every match has to be a technical masterpiece, especially when the entertainment value is as high as this one was, and that's what it was all about. So I think this was probably as good as anything on the card. It was your main event. You look at all the parties involved here again, just the way Piper and Orndorff and even Bob Orton played off of Hogan and Mr. T. And, that's kind of your closing visual is Mean Gene with Hogan and Mr. T, who kind of celebrate their victory here to cap off WrestleMania I. Okay, as we'll do on a lot of these, when we go through these particular shows, recommended matches. The two tag team matches aren't great, but they're the best things on this particular card. The main event and I think the tag title match, where you did have the heels win, but for different reasons, I think they're probably the best of the bunch. I mentioned Ricky Steamboat, kind of a standout performer here, but when we go to the show MVP, I'm going to actually give it to Gorilla Monsoon and Jesse the Body Ventura. So our first show MVP award here for WrestleMania I in our Golden Age Rewind series. They were just terrific. And, they pushed the meaning of this show. They pushed how important it was for not just, maybe the WWF in general, but also just pushing, like I mentioned, the little things of what a win and loss can mean. Pushing, the importance of the main event, like all those type of things. They were terrific. Also, maybe a little, shout out to Mr. T and Cyndi Lauper as well, for, maybe to a lesser extent, some MVPs of the show. I mean, they played a role just from a pure visibility standpoint. Just having them included obviously was a huge deal for the WWF, and they had a lot of fun with it, you could tell. But I'm going to surprisingly give my show MVPs to the commentary team of Gorilla Monsoon and Jesse the Body Ventura. Overall thoughts on this one, there's plenty of nostalgia with WrestleMania 1, but it is far from a must-see wrestling show. But how, this one just cannot be understated, though, in terms of importance. As for quality, probably going to be on the lower end of WrestleManias throughout history if we really stacked it up against all of those. Although, if we fast forward 1 year, we'll get to WrestleMania 2, but it's going to get a higher rating than WrestleMania 2 would. But the celebrity involvement was fun. The MSG crowd brought the enthusiasm here. It just may not be one that has a lot of replay value versus other ones that we'll get to, WrestleMania 3 and so forth. So this is probably one where, it's fun to go back and watch if you haven't watched it in a while. Probably also not one you're going to just have on replay, unless you just enjoy like I mentioned, the nostalgia from 1985 and seeing the celebrity involvement and all that. But there's really not a lot else, unless you just want to listen to it on audio and only listen to Gorilla Monsoon and Jesse the Body Ventura. I wouldn't hate that. So that's how good they were on this particular show. So there you go. There's the WrestleMania I review. And as I mentioned, we will have more stuff surrounding WrestleMania I. We're going to do multiple kind of videos / podcasts on these shows, but some of these will just be straight up reviews, as this one was kind of me giving you my notes from the show, watching it as is, and we'll get into more kind of deep dives surrounding WrestleMania I, the build to it, the fallout, all those things, and other videos here on what will be a pretty fun and exciting series here. Golden Age Rewind, one of, right now, 4 series we have on the Rewind Wrestling channel, with the New Generation Era Rewind, Attitude Era Rewind, and Ruthless Aggression Rewind as well. So if you enjoy different eras in professional wrestling, you can find them all here on the channel. Some of these will be video podcasts at some point as well, so they won't just be audio, but if you enjoy listening to podcasts, some of these, again, will simply be straight up audio also. So appreciate your interest and appreciate your enjoyment of professional wrestling from years past. Hit that subscribe button, hit the like button, helps us out, and leave a comment. What were your memories of WrestleMania I back in March of 1985? And again, appreciate your support of our professional wrestling nostalgia. And thanks again for watching and or listening. And let me know your thoughts on WrestleMania I.